so I have a controversial teacher opinion, and it is that this, and even this are not classroom management. But don't worry, talk all things classroom management today in episode 2 of my summer bootcamp back to school series. So let's get started. Okay, so classroom management is the techniques and strategies that you use as a teacher to manage your classroom to make sure that students are learning, respectful, engaged, all of those things. I have 5 tips for you that will help you start thinking about your classroom management and start you kind of like envisioning how you're gonna run your classroom. What strategies and effective routines are you going to use to get your classroom ready to go? So tip number 1 is routines and procedures. And I know I talked about this in episode 1, but it is so important. Routines and procedures are all of the things that you're going to do in your classroom, and why they're important is because students need to understand them in order to do them correctly, right? And so you have to explicitly teach routines and procedures to all of your students, and you have to practice them so that all students know how to function in your classroom, right? And so maybe your procedure is that all students come into class with a notebook and a pencil, right? That is the basic understanding that everybody is going to be at their seat with a notebook and a pencil every single day. And so maybe the first week of school, you go over that routine, you model, you explain, you practice, right? And then from there, you expect that. And so if a student comes in with no pencil and notebook, there's going to be things in place to help them practice and master that skill so that you can have an effective classroom and you can teach the content that you want to teach. Tip number 2 is having crystal clear expectations. And this goes along with routines and procedures. I think if you've taught an explicit routine and procedure, that is a crystal clear expectation. But I think that we all do better when we know what the expectations are, right? And so that is addressing expectations in the moment and telling your students, hey, my expectation right now is XYZ, and we're gonna follow it because of this reason, right? Having crystal clear expectations and reminding students why you have those crystal clear expectations, I think is super important. And then also like bringing your students in on that expectation, right? Guys, why do you think we need to do this? Why do you think the procedure is this way? And getting them to understand that your expectation is part of your classroom community, that you all buy into this so that you can have effective classroom management. Number 3 is making your classroom a positive place to be, right? Obviously, we've all heard the statistics that students learn better from people that they like and that they want to come to school more when they're engaged and they have positive relationships. And so I think, always making sure that you're using positive language as a teacher. And my biggest tip to this is that you don't get into power struggles with students. So if there is a student not meeting expectation or not following a routine and procedure, you're going to simply redirect. So you're going to say, Tommy, you need to have a pencil right now. Right? Simple, clear. And Tommy might say something back. You're not going to engage in that conversation. You put your expectation, right? If Tommy continues to have that persistent battle, then there are other things that I think you can do to kind of manage that situation. But just having that really clear and concise language with students that is not punitive, right? That it's just, hey, here's the expectation. We're going to move on. And then also just building that positive rapport with your students, getting to know them, and talking to them like somebody you respect, having them talk to you, telling them about your life, listening to their life, all of those good things are going to build positive classroom community. And I have a whole list of things that you can do to build a positive classroom community on the blog post about this episode. Tip number 4 is classroom engagement. I think that people sleep on classroom engagement as a classroom management technique because a lot of people think like, oh, I need to give my students tickets, I need to do prize box, I need to do all these things, right, to get students bought into the learning. But I think when your expectation is that all students are bought into the learning, right, everybody is participating, everybody is doing what they're expected to be doing, and then backing that up with really engaging and powerful learning, that you don't have to have, you'll find that you don't have to have those little ticket systems in place, and that there doesn't need to be an external reward because you're teaching students how to intrinsically participate in what they're learning. I just think that the more engaging you are, the more you're getting students moving, the more you're getting them talking, the more that you're having academic discourse, right? You're going to see less student behavior, you're going to see less students off task, and you yourself are going to feel like your classroom is just a more well-managed place to be. And the last tip that I have, tip number 5, is consistent consequences and modeling. And so this is kind of twofold. Modeling is anytime you teach a routine and procedure, anytime you teach an expectation, anytime you want students to do literally anything, you are going to model, right? So every single time I want students to raise their hand, I am like this. right? My body is modeling what I want my students to be doing. And so you are always, always, always modeling the expectation first. And then you're also gonna have students model the expectation. And even for fun, you can have students model the non-expectation and then kind of talk about that. And then the last thing is consistent consequences. And I kind of do this in a three-pronged way, right? If you can't handle it, you lose a privilege, right? That's one consequence, is loss of privilege. You fix it, you break it, right? That one's super simple. And then the last one is like a timeout, break, a removal from the situation. And so those three consequences are really simple. If you can't handle having a pencil, or you can't handle this certain situation because you're not meeting expectation, then you're gonna lose that privilege. If you cause some sort of disruptance, or you do something that's not effective to our classroom management, you're gonna have to fix that. And then the last part is maybe sometimes students just need a moment to themselves, right? They can't be a positive member of your classroom community, and so they need a little timeout, whether that be in your classroom, in the hallway, something like that, until they're ready to come back. But I think the caveat with consistent expectation and consequence is also that these are always a conversation, right? You're never gonna give a consequence without a conversation. You're always going to follow up with that student and explain to them the why and talk to them about the impact that they had with their behavior. And I hope that helps. Right? So these are all the things that I have for classroom management. Of course, those tools I showed at the beginning, they're not classroom management, but they can be used in conjunction with all of the things that we just discussed to help make your classroom a more managed place. And if you have any questions, please drop them below. If you want to learn more, you can read all about it on my website. And I will see you in episode 3, where we talk about my favorite topic ever, which is morning meeting.